Good morning, everyone, and thank you so very much for being here today on this wonderful, quiet Monday. I am Zubida Pasha, one of the educational support coach at Family Matters. We are going to talk about today all IEPs and a little bit about 504 plan. Let's see who we are and what we do. Family Matters is a parent training information center that is covering now and serving the entire state of Illinois. We have about 12% of families who have kiddos with IEPs and 504, and we are doing our very, very best to provide all the supports and the tools, helping parents to build that toolbox to make sure that they become the best advocate for their kids. Family Matters have been around for a long time, serving families in Southern Illinois a while ago, but in this grant cycle, we are going to serve the entire state. And the main mission is advocacy, support, empowerment, and helping families to be educated on their rights in terms of special education. A little bit about me. I think you have heard my conversation with my wonderful colleague, Abby. I am a parent of an adult with IDD. My role at Family Matters is an educational support coach where I provide support. I empower families with resources and information, and I educate families on their rights when it comes to special education. I am a sister, a baby sister at that. I am a friend, and I am a community partner that have been involved in different capacities within my community on a small scale and on a large scale. I don't know about fun coworkers. Abby might testify to this. I love my team. I do my very best to collaborate and bring really, really that enthusiasm spirit to my team at each project. Okay, so all about IEPs. But before I start the IEP conversation, we have to say where the IEP is coming. It is coming from IDEA, which is the Individual with Disability Education Act. That is the federal law that governs special education for kids from 0 to 22, one day before they turn 22. But from 0 to 3, that is a Part C that we are not going to cover today. We are only going to cover Part B, school age student, all the way to transition in terms of IEP or dissecting the component of the IEP. IDEA was enacted in 1975, but before IDEA, there was another act, a federal law act that was called All Handicapped Children Act. And that one was kind of similar to IDEA. However, IDEA, I feel it has strong stipulations, strong principles that we need to really know and learn and adapt um, in our letters and our conversations with the school. The first important principle that we really, really tell parents to put in their emails, in their letters, even in their verbal conversation with the school is free appropriate public education. And what does that mean? It means at free, at no cost to the parent, to meet the unique need of the student that has the disability. Now, the disability must adversely impact the student learning for them to receive free appropriate public education. Free appropriate public education only apply itself when a student has an IEP. Then how to really access that free appropriate public education when we have a comprehensive or a full case study evaluation or non-discriminatory evaluation. It has to be fair, comprehensive, and culturally responsive to meet the need of the student who may not be proficient in English, for example, or coming from a different background, etc., etc. This is IDEA stipulating these things about the evaluation. After evaluation, and if the student is eligible to receive services found eligible, then there is an individualized education plan that we are going to talk about in this presentation that will be discussed and dissected with the parent. The fourth principle is the least restrictive environment, which is simply the placement. After we talk about the support and services, then the team, including the parent and sometimes the student, will ask themselves, Where are we going to implement these services, which is in the least restrictive environment? All students with IEPs or without IEPs should start as a platform from the least restrictive environment where they can be educated and taught with non-disabled peers. Now, this is not me saying this. However, the need of the student, the way the disability is impacting the student may have, something to say in terms of placement, depending on the levels of support that the student is in need of. The fifth principle, which is critically important, and sometimes parents don't know it, and that's how Family Matters really, really works super hard to say, hey, you are an equal partner in the process. And this is why we really build these toolboxes with the tools necessary for parents to advocate and help their kids to perform and be at their best. Parents are equal partner in the process, meaning that they have the same leverage in terms of decision making. Parents, they don't have to go to school to earn a master's degree in special education, but they do have lengthy experience, very extensive experience just being a parent because they know the need of their loved one or their child. And when I say parent, by the way, I did not provide this disclaimer. We are going to refer to parent, caregivers, in this presentation because every family is different. So please forgive me if I don't, kind of say parent or caregivers. It is pertaining to whoever is involved in the child educational planning and conversation. Also, I would refer to the child, student. It depends, on how I'm going to just navigate my conversation with you all today. Last but not least is procedural safeguard, which is simply the right of the parent on what to do when they agree and what to do when they disagree. It is okay to disagree, but disagree without being disagreeable, meaning that you have to know your right. You have to be organized with all of the data and the facts, because when you are in the conversations about the IEP or any service for your child who is receiving these special education supports and services, you really have to keep a log, documentation, a paper trail. That means you have to have facts at hand. So, in the 6 principles of IDEA, the third principle was the IEP. So what is an IEP? If you look at the words here that is kind of outlined in the IEP, there is a keyword, individualized. What does that mean? It should be created, crafted to meet the unique need of that student. We cannot copy paste somebody's IEP from John Smith to Danielle Ferreira. We can't do that. Every student is unique and they have to have that individualized instruction designed to meet their unique need. The IEP is also a legally binding document, which is critically important to understand. What does that mean? It is a formal contract between the parent and the school district to ensure specific services are provided. You cannot breach that contract. When you go buy a car, you have a contract. Within 3 days, you change your mind, you can take that car back. And if you have all the feature within that car and you bring the car home and some of the features are missing and you have a contract, you go back to that dealer and you say, hey, you breached that contract. Well, same thing for the IEP. The school have to provide all the services and support outlined in that document based on the conversation, and above all, the need of the student is the command for this platform. Secondly, IEP must be a document written. 504 does not have to be written, but IEP must be documented. That is very, very important to understand and speaks volume on keeping documentation and a log pertaining to IEP, conversation, navigation, and etc. It is tailored to individual needs. Each IEP is unique, developed to meet the specific educational need and goals of a single student. You see here, single student, because sometimes we have seen and detected copy paste, which human error, which is fine. We have to admit we make errors, but nonetheless, we have to be meaningfully involved in addressing those situations. IEP should be at least reviewed annually. And another thing I want you all to know about the IEP, it is a living document that you can open at any time of the year when there are serious concern. Do you have to hold a meeting? Not necessary, depending on the concern. If you had reviewed your IEP meeting last week and this week something happened and you need to do some adjustment, it depends on what is the adjustment needed. You don't have to hold a meeting. This is an agreement between you as a parent and the school. But if it is necessary and you need to sit at that table and meet with the school, that can be also an option. But do know that the IEP, a living document, that means it can be open at any time of the year. The IEP is designed to fulfill to the better end free appropriate public education. It guarantees the student the right to have access to all services and support to make that meaningful progress within the general education curriculum. The other thing that sometimes we don't talk about or even think about is the general education curriculum. Our students who have an IEP, they have the access to general education curriculum. There is one curriculum for all our students, whether they have an IEP or don't, whether they have a disability or don't. One curriculum. For our students who have disabilities and have an IEP, the access to the curriculum is through the IEP that will tailor that curriculum for the student to access it depending on their needs. Any questions so far? Because I say a lot of words and I don't want to miss anything in here. Okay. So who qualify for an IEP in Illinois? You have IDEA, which is the federal law that governs the special education for all students who qualify to receive those services. In Illinois, we have our code part 226. So you have the federal umbrella, which is IDEA, but each state, they go by their own regulation. It is not too far from IDEA, but it may have some few minor changes. For example, timelines may be different between IDEA and our code, administrative code part 226. Qualifying for an IEP come with a very, very serious and important stipulation where the disability have to adversely impact the student learning. That's the qualification and eligibility to receive services under IEP. Under IDEA, there are 16 categories to qualify for an IEP. But again, this is one of the tweaks that, it is between our code part 226 and IDEA. We in Illinois adapted 14 categories. We start with the autism, and you see here in this slide, to the visual impairment. By the way, you are going to receive the slides, and you are also going to receive some resources, and you will have our information if you have any questions or concerns. The most important thing, again, to really retain from this slide is how the disability adversely impact the student learning for them to qualify under IEP. You see in this slide here is the educational impact that has to be stipulated for the student to access the IEP. Whether they will have one disability or multiple disabilities, here you will see all of the categories in the state of Illinois. What are the rights of the parent when it comes to IEP? Well, the first one is participation, meaningful participation. The parent should be invited to the IEP. The parent should receive that NOC, which is the notice of conference, 10 days prior to the IEP meeting. The reason being, parents need that time to prepare, meaning that they have to look at the last year IEP, talk to their family members, talk to their child or their student based on, their levels, and tell them, hey, I'm going to your IEP. What do you want to learn next year? What do you like about school? Just simple question can lead to huge conversation. The example of this is coming from my own experience as a parent. When my daughter was small, was in first grade, I remember vividly with her label of autism, they were like, okay, she is in a cluster program. She is fine. She is fine. She's receiving all what she needs. We don't need a BIP. We don't need a behavior intervention plan. I said, we need a behavior intervention plan. If she keep moving around the classroom, where is the time for learning? That was my main question to them. And they said, well, we are going to kind of provide the support as we go. And I said, that was not an answer for me. You have to really abide by the guidelines of providing the behavioral support, because if she's eloping from her seat, that's a behavior. So they said, well, we will think about it. And then her IEP come, and I took her with me to that IEP. I told them I need her here for 5 minutes, but I had a conversation with her, very limited communication skills. And I asked her, what do you like about school? And she says, Disney books and Disney video, Disney princess. She keeps saying that repeatedly because she have echolalia with her autism. And I took her to that meeting and I told her, what do you like about school? And she says, Disney book, Disney video, Disney. And I looked at them, I said, do you get the hint from this? And they looked at me and they said, not very well. I said, you make that as a reinforcer so she can be seated and learn like everybody else. The teacher, who is still in touch with us to today, she said, I had learned something from your daughter's participation. She is my student, and I did not see that. She all the time has something Disney in her hand, whether it is a book, toy, whatever that is. But I did not get that gist of it until I heard it from her. And I said, it's all about nothing about us without us. So when you take your student to those meetings, it really shifts the conversation, because when we go to those meetings, us parents with the professionals, they think it's us requesting. One of the things that I also learned through my advocacy tenure is having a picture of the student in the meeting. That will shift the conversation about the student, kind of redirect the team. It's not me asking, I am a grown up and I can handle my business, but it is about that student. So you can redirect the conversation. The other right that the parent have is accessing the record. Parent must deal with all matters in terms of IEP in writing. If you need to access your child or your student's record, you have to put it in writing. School district have 15 school days to respond yes or no. In the event they say no, they have to provide you with an explanation. In the event they say yes, you have to make, the arrangement how to receive the record or go visit the record. It depends on what are you asking in terms of record. The right to consent. Parent, they have to provide consent for services to start, for evaluation to start, and so forth. The right to request an evaluation when you are concerned about something with your child. We parents bring to the table that experience and expertise, being a parent. You know when things are not working well. That being said, you have to really make that time to request those things in writing if you suspect that there is something that is going. Now you have an IEP already in place, and God forbid your child or a student take a fall, which I had a case a while ago. This young man, he was doing well with his IEP. He had a category of X, but he fell in the cafeteria on concrete, and it became a TBI, traumatic brain injury. The parent was deeply concerned about the memory lapses, the pain, the absences because of that TBI, of that concussion that led to the traumatic brain injury. So when we had, started talking to the parent, she was like, I don't get it. They are not hearing me. I said, put it in writing. She said, they are saying we just had the meeting. I said, it doesn't matter because he did not fall before. This is new, and you have all the medical record to back you up. Let's move on with the right processes of requesting an evaluation for that component. And it was an add-on category of traumatic brain injury. Parents should receive a written notice. When school provide these notices, before they propose or refuse any action concerning your child. Now, prior written notice can go both ways. School can send you a prior written notice when you are refusing to do something that they are proposing. Vice versa, parent, they have to send a prior written notice when they refuse a proposal by the school district. Now, keep in mind, all of these proposals have to be in line to provide support and services under IDEA to fulfill free, appropriate public education. This is really an alignment that you do not forget as you navigate the IEP processes. Last but not least is procedural safeguard, as we saw in the sixth principle of IDEA, which is the right for the parent to say yes when I agree, when I disagree without being disagreeable. I'm just adding this as an advocate and support, is to say why. It's critically important to provide that reasonable explanation in and out of each process. But the parent will receive that large packet that the school should provide at each annual meeting. Please don't disregard that large paper that you are given by the school when the IEP is scheduled. If you are given that paper before the meeting, is critically important you read it. Reach out if you need us to explain to you some of the things that are written, because sometimes the language of those paper may be a little bit complex, confusing, and whatnot. And we are here to help you navigate those aspects. If disagreement arises, you have access to dispute resolution option, including mediation, state complaint, etc. But us, our organization, we do not get involved in these processes. And please, again, forgive me. This is my first formal training with Family Matters, where I did not provide the disclaimer that we are not a legal agency. We do not provide legal advice. And I think in the chat, my colleague, wonderful colleague, had put that in the chat. The IEP process starts by requesting an initial evaluation. The requests have to be put in writing. Again, it is boring to hear me over and over say in writing, because if it is not in writing, it does not exist. So keep that in mind. The conversation have to be put in writing by the parent, for example, requesting an initial evaluation, concern about the performance of their students, the homework not completed, bad grades, social emotional distress, etc. It can be a number of things. After the parent requests the initial evaluation in writing, providing it to the school district have 14 school days to say, yes, we are going to move with a meeting to address your concern. And that meeting is called domain. And in that meeting is a very, very important to really discuss all suspected area of disability. The sky is the limit. You cannot limit yourself on the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. You can go above and beyond, because when you send your student, you send the student as a whole with their emotion, with their communication, with all the things that it will lead him to a successful school day. So if they are happy to communicate with their classmates, that's a good thing. It's an aha moment. Anything that a student is able to achieve on their own is an aha moment, and it's something to really cherish and celebrate. And these are the things that IDEA, IEP is about, is to help the student achieve access and be successful. After the 14th school day, we meet to discuss the domain, all areas of suspected disabilities. It can be the academic performance, it can be the social emotion, it can be communication, it can be the physical access, etc., etc. After that meeting, parent must provide consent. And if you remember the other slide, we have discussed the parent right to consent. The clock will not start if the parent does not provide that okay or consent to start the evaluation. School district have 60 school days to complete the evaluation and come to the table to discuss eligibility determination. The team review the evaluation results or the report to decide if the student will meet the federal guidelines or criteria to require special education services. If you remember, the disability must adversely impact the learning of the student to access their educational settings. Then the team and the parent included, because we are equal partner in the process, we will develop the IEP as a team to discuss how the support will be provided. Then the next conversation, where the support will be provided. Parents have 10 calendar days to say, yes, I agree to the IEP to be implemented, or no. But you have to say why you are not agreeing. Again, when there is a no from both parties, parent or school, a reasonable explanation must be provided. At every year, the IEP must be reviewed. And again, IEP is a living document that can be opened at any time when there are serious concerns. Whether you will hold a meeting or not, we will discuss this option as we go in this presentation. I'm going to pause for a minute. If there any question, you can unmute or go to the chat. I'm hearing none. Okay. There are 7 components of the IEP. I'm going to cite them here, but we are going to go through them separately. The very first one that is critically important in the IEP is the present level of academic performance and the academic achievement and functional performance. I call it the PLEF. That's why I use a lot of acronym. And please forgive me if I use an acronym. I don't mean no harm. I just kind of forget it's a habit. The second one is annual goals. The third is special education services and support. Related services, accommodation and modification, participation in general education, which is the LRE again, and then the transition. Transition, I'm going to pause for a minute. On a federal level, transition will start when the student turns 16. But Illinois, we can say we are lucky because our students start transition at 14 and a half. And that's when the student must be present in the IEP and participate. I understand sometimes parents get concerned because in the IEP meetings, a lot of things are said about the student they cannot do. Well, this is life. We have to help our students to understand their need so they can advocate. Think about it from that perspective. And I am a parent. I had my daughter the very first time when she was in first grade to say 2 words. It was less than 5 minutes. If you have a student who have an IEP, start thinking they are going to become an adult and they will access the real world. This is an opportunity for them to really have that stepping stone to say what they want to say. They will say what they need to say. Is about them and about their need and what it will make them happy. In education, I don't take being happy for granted, because when a student is happy going to school, it means a lot. They will perform, they will do a whole lot. If the student is unhappy, and of course there may be reasons, then we have to dissect those things that can be related to disability, that can be related to environment and so forth. There are many things. So let's take a deep dive into these things about the IEP as we dissect every piece. Present level of academic achievement and functional performance, again, the PLAF, it is the foundation element of every IEP. Why? Because it gives us a lot of information about the student performance on multiple levels, the academic and functional. When you hear the word functional, it's non-academic, meaning it can be communication, social, emotional, physical ability, all of the above. So academic is about learning, the 1, 2, 3s and the ABCs. And please forgive me, I'm using these very simple examples so we can kind of really process things easily. It provides a detail, a snapshot of where the student currently stands and performing in their educational journey. If you have a 3rd grader, Johnny, the present level should tell us where is Johnny in that 3rd grade level. He may be at the 3rd grade with some kind of things that are going on a social emotional, but they can be also below that grade level. And it should really tell us where Johnny is. Are they able to read? Are they able to do math? Are they able to engage in a conversation and in a small work group, etc., etc.? That's what the present level is all about. It serves as the bedrock of the IEP. It offers a holistic snapshot of the student. When I say holistic, you can see here the words academic and functional. And functional is a big umbrella, which you will guide all the decisions as a team. And this is including the parent. The parent have a say-so with the PLEF when it comes to functional information. They can say, oh, they are able to do the homework on their own with minimal prompting from me. They are able to organize the folders of homework, etc. If there are executive functioning, underlining issues, etc. So that also, don't forget, the parent equal partner, they can have some information and some input in this regard. It really meticulously detailed the student's strength, academic performance, social skills, etc., along specific area of requiring support. It explained how the disability is impacting the student. This is crucial because we need to keep that language in the IEP so we can start really dissecting how the support and the services will look like for the student. The PLEF is data-driven. We are not going to say words without having facts. So it is data driven. So the team have to provide all documentation to demonstrate where the student is at that particular grade level. If they are reading, they have to give us samples of the reading material, paragraph, etc., passages, whatever that is. If they are able to do math, they have to provide us work samples on operational, numerical operation, word problem, etc., etc. So it is data driven. It has to have a lot of material, a lot of facts to be presented that is coming from comprehensive evaluation. The PLEF also will have information from recent evaluations, whether it is initial or if it is a 3-year reevaluation. We keep that information for 3 years to give us that really that snapshot or that level of that student. Any questions about this? Because again, this is the bedrock of the IEP. This is the foundation of the IEP. If we understand this, we have a whole lot of conversation to go along with the IEP, because if we don't have a present level, if we don't understand the present of the student, we won't have a good conversation about services and support. Okay, I don't hear any questions. Then after we identify all of those levels, then we may detect some needs or gaps. And here come the goals that will bridge those gaps. So the goals have to be specific, telling us where are the gaps happening. For example, my daughter's, gaps, they have been, still is comprehension and inferencing. And way back when we had the IEP, we really have that goal repeated over and over based on, the grade level, but it has been depending on where she is. Some years she had gained very, very good momentum in terms of her functioning or of her comprehension. And some years she was kind of stagnant. However, I was specific on inferences, the verbal and the written, both, with the team, because they agreed. They said, yes, when you give her a lot of words and language, she feels stuck. And then we have to measure. And in measuring the goals, it is quantitative. It is quantity that will really, really matter here. How many times I'm going to practice that skill deficit with that student? Then we have to repeat 9 times out of 10 or 80% of the time. Sometimes teams, they go with percentage and sometimes they go with trial. So you and the team, you the parent who have the expertise on your child or your student, will decide alongside with the team what will be workable for you. For academic, my thing that I have done when my daughter was in school was easy for me to do the percentage. But sometimes you have to choose trials for non-academic. We did the trial because for social emotional, percentage was hard for me to track. So how many times I'm going to repeat that thing with, that skill for that session with my daughter was a little bit easy, as the social worker explained to me. The goal have to be achievable and attainable. That means we have, again, this is where the present level come in play. We have to go where the student is and then scaffold. We want the reason of all of this, again, is to access the educational setting with success, providing the appropriate support and services. And we want that goal to be attainable. We cannot put a goal that is too high and too difficult and complex for the student to achieve. We have to be realistic, and we have to use the kind of the mindset of attainable, given the student ability and resources that they will receive from the teachers, from the team. Relevant. Why we have to be relevant in this conversation? Because it has to align with the student's needs and the educational advancement for that particular grade level for accessing the general education curriculum. So this is a reminder again, students who have IEP, they access the general educational curriculum with supports and with accommodations and modification. We also have to keep in mind the time. We have to put a time on the goals. We cannot have goals from kindergarten to third grade. We cannot have the same goal from first grade to fifth grade. We can't. We have to go by every year as we review the IEP on where is the student. That means where is their level based on the data that was collected and that was, gathered by the professional. And of course, the input of the parent is very meaningful in this process. That being said, we have to have SMART goal: specific, measurable, achievable or attainable, relevant, and time-bound. In the achievable or attainable, we have sometimes to really explain the method of how are we going to achieve this goal. We have to provide explanation. For example, one of the things that was very, very consistent in our example with our daughter pertaining to the comprehension goal is providing her with visuals and graphic organizers for her to achieve that. So there is sometimes examples that you can utilize, but again, you will see our number, our information. If you have any further questions, if you don't have them now, please reach out to us and we are here to help you navigate all of these information. The other component of the IEP that is very important to please look at when you have a moment to check the education, special education and related service. In special education and related service, it depends on where you are in the district. I am very familiar with Chicago Public School. It is section 9 of the IEP. That's where you will see a lot of information pertaining to the paraprofessional support, the behavior, the assistive technology, et cetera, et cetera. In that section, also, they will really explain to you how to adapt the content, the methodology, the delivery of instruction to address the unique need of the student, ensuring that they can access and make progress in the general education curriculum. And again, this is an alignment to free appropriate public education to meet the unique need of the student to make the expected progress in accessing the general education curriculum. It's a lot of words, it's a lot of definition, but I think practicing and contacting us will help you, to get the gist of it. The specially designed instruction must be based on evidence-based practices that is validated through peer-reviewed research. A lot of times we hear programs and we hear interventions and we hear names, and I'm not trying to be funny. Sometimes we compare Macy's to Walmart. Well, no, this is not Chevy versus Cadillac. Comparison. There is no comparison. Every comparison that we have to hold it because we have to look at the need of the student and what it requires in terms of supports and services. Then, if the need of the student require a program, a reading program, for example, an intervention to address behavioral, social, emotional, school obligation is to do what is right and what is necessary to provide it as an evidence-based practice, peer-reviewed research. They cannot just randomly pull something out of a drawer and say, we will try it. We will try. You can try. There is nothing wrong with that as long as that tool, it is evidence-based practice and coming from all of these venues. These practices are scientifically proven to be effective for students with disabilities, and IEP teams should select intervention and instructional methods that have strong research support. This to ensure students receive the most effective and appropriate, I will add the word appropriate here, research-backed educational approaches. Every student's need is unique, and every intervention should be also custom and tailored to meet the need, but using the evidence-based practices and to keep due diligence in mind. Related services are coming into this slide, and it's a lot of them. But I want to highlight certain things sometimes that we talk about and we don't know it is a related service. It's transportation. Transportation is a related service, and why we sometimes don't think about it because, oh, transportation is the last thing in the IEP. I have seen it over and over. Well, it is a related service because it will help the student to access their education environment if they need it. It can be specialized transportation, not necessarily specialized transportation, but if they need it and due to the adverse effect of their disability, they cannot walk to school, not because it's not safe and the neighborhood is not safe. It is not a definition for a student to access transportation. Transportation access when the disability adversely impacts the student to take public transportation and to walk on their own. That's when you access transportation. So I am connecting here the dots to the definition of disability to access any service that you see on this slide. It has to be done through evaluations and eligibility. And again, it goes under the functional kind of category of the conversation during the IEP. If a student have communication issues or disorders, the speech pathologist will conduct that evaluation and will see if they are eligible to receive these services. Counseling, nurse services, assistive technology can go both as a related service and special consideration in the IEP that I will mention in this presentation. Audiology services, if the student is having issues with the hearing or they are under the label of hearing impairment. Therapeutic and recreation, it is assessment and development of leisure and recreation, which is kind of like what's, non-curriculum, non-academic, and, under the functional. Occupational therapy, if the student really having those sensory moments to access the education settings, etc. Social work, and we all know after pandemic, post-pandemic, most of our students are very much impacted with that isolation where now they are struggling with the social emotionals. And I have heard that, over and over. Just last week, one of the parents who had contacted us, he says, my baby is struggling after the pandemic. He really he just don't want to talk. And he adapted now, to something that they did not expect, selective mutism. And I have to really dissect that information in my head to provide those support on a social emotional where the social worker was saying, no, I see all the things, based on observation. The core of the evaluation is to utilize different tools to assess the student and to detect where is the problem. This is just simple, plain language. So we can address it and bridge those gaps through support and services. Physical therapy, if it is needed, psychological services, and interpretation is critically important that would facilitate the communication for those who are deaf or hard of hearing, etc. Accommodation and modification is part of the conversation, and it is part really of the fabric of the IEP. Accommodation definition is a change or how the student will access their education environment. It can be a tool that they need, a cushion on a chair, for example. That's accommodation. Having the students seated away from distraction, like from windows and doors, because they are easily distracted. That's accommodation. Giving a little bit of more time for a student to complete their classroom work or assessment is an accommodation. Audiobooks, if they need an audiobook, that's an accommodation. Visual aids or visual schedules. That being said, is a change to the education environment for access. Accommodate modification, on the other hand, is when we change the content itself for the student to access that curriculum. Modification can come with the nuance of low expectations. Why? Because when we say modification, sometimes you hear the words water it down. Please correct that language immediately. There is not such a thing, water it down. Modification can be shrinking from 3-4 chapters. We can provide the student one chapter to read if they are, on an IEP and they are really struggling with the reading component. In modification, we look at the quality. We never discount the quality of education that the student should receive based on the guidelines of IDEA. Modification can be reducing the workload, like I said, kind of from 4 or 5 chapters to 1 chapter, or from 1 chapter to a couple of paragraphs. But we don't discount the learning through those 2 paragraphs for the reading fluency, for the comprehension, for the writing skills, and all of that. It simplifies the assignment. Again, we don't tap into the quality. Simplifying the assignment, for example, from a sentence question, we can do a multiple choice kind of platform or format. Modified grading scales, this come with pros and cons. The parents are expert on their children and they can really make that informed decision on what will work for their child. Modified grading scales is when the B become an A, the C become a B, etc. I don't have all of those, numbers precisely in my head, but it will modify from the standard grading, which is the A with 100% to 95. It would become the B, which is the 90 to 85, become an A. Now, again, it comes with pros and cons. You have to make that decision. You have to have that conversation with the teachers, with the school personnel, and ask informed question. What will be the benefit and what will be the disadvantage? Alternate curriculum. Sometimes you hear the alternate curriculum, and again, not tapping into the quality of the education or the curriculum itself. There are visual curriculums, like my daughter, when she was younger and she did not have the verbal skills, they were reading material with pictures. And also assistive technology was a complement to all of what she did. So they had provided her with picture books where she'd see the picture, she see the word, and she correlate. And that was the platform of her reading skills. So this is alternate curriculum focusing on functional skills instead of academic. There are also alternate curriculum for students who are in high school, and you can hear sometimes the conversation. I've heard it in IEP meetings and transition meetings at that, I should say transition meetings than IEP in high school, is everyday math, where they have to do financial literacy, where they have to understand how to spend the dollar for purchases and understand cheap or expensive using a coupon. Sometimes understanding somebody's account, debit, credit. So these are alternate curriculum, but it is not for every grade level. When they are in grammar school, they may not have that conversation, but they can learn through alternate curriculum. Both strategies are designed to provide, meaning both accommodation and modification is to provide the student with disability meaningful access to their education, which is the curriculum, fostering their growth and participation. The key distinction lies whether how or the what, and that's critically important. How can we address the gaps, and how can we bridge them, and what do we do for the learning to be adjusted to do so? Any questions? I'm going to pause for a couple of minutes. I'm checking the chat. Thank you so much, Megan, for putting all of those information and resources. Okay, hearing none. After we discuss all the support and services, then the team, including the parent, will ask themselves where these services are going to be provided. Like I said, and you going to receive the parent guide, and please look at chapter 7 of the State Board of Education Parent Guide for Special Education. There, your rights and your obligation and your responsibility guide. In Chapter 7, you will see the least restrictive environment continuum. In that continuum, you will see we start first and foremost with general education settings for our kids. But will that be appropriate? It depends on their needs. I have seen kids who have been around my daughter who have been taught in general education settings with support and services. It is not impossible. The command, again, to all of this is the need of the student and how the disability impact them to access that general education or that education setting as a whole. Least restrictive environment is the fundamental principle of of IDEA, and it says, and I'm quoting, to the maximum extent appropriate children with disabilities, including children in public or private institution or care facilities, are educated with children who are not disabled. So this is kind of quoted from IDEA. Again, not all children belong to general education. Not all children belong to smaller settings such as self-contained and resource and etc. It depends on the levels of support that is needed for the student based on their disability and how it impacts itself. And it's really requiring a lot of conversation here on the minutes. You will see all the information in Chapter 7 because I don't want to mislead you about the minutes because I am good with the minutes, but I don't want to say something that you may not understand now. I'd rather for you to have the parent guide to understand all of the minutes that will lead to each setting. In short, the least restrictive environment is critically important to understand. The where the services are going to be provided is when we really understand the need of the student. Students who have IEPs, again, the platform is when we start from the general education with support and services. Some students cannot, my daughter included, could not be taught in that setting because of sensory overload. So we have to make that hard decision of self-contained, where she was taught in a very smaller setting. The ratio of student and teacher was very high because she needed those support due to the level of support she needed. Implementing the LRE involved a continuum of placement from general education with support services to more restrictive settings such as home and hospital. Home and hospital settings does not give the student the exposure to non-disabled peer. Due to the condition or medical condition of that student, not all student will be in the hospital. That being said, the school obligations still have to provide the IEP support and services in those settings. Now, when I say home, it's homebound, not homeschooling. Homeschooling is a separate conversation, it's a separate placement. Home schooling is a placement if the parent chooses to do that. There's not a lot to be done about the IEP. The school does not have to do a whole lot about the IEP, but we will send you that information as well when we send you all of the PowerPoint and the resources. Homebound is a placement when the student is unable to attend the school for 10 consecutive days. It can be medical or mental health. School and parent will come to the decision of the homebound only for 90 days. Homebound is also only 10% of the instructional time. 10%. They will not have the full access to the school. The school will send someone to the home depending on what are the arrangements between the school and the home, the parent, of course, based on the schedule, to teach that kid those core subjects only on a 10% base. So again, you have to be informed, and that's how Family Matters is here to help with that information and those resources. Any questions about the LRE? Okay. Progress monitoring is very important to really understand and know. Why? Because we have to follow up with the progress that our children is making alongside the professional. Progress monitoring is part, detail, specific, that is used to evaluate the student progress towards each goal, each annual goal, and each benchmark for that matter. Formal and informal assessment is involved, classroom observation, work sample and portfolio, and behavioral data collection. The reporting to the parent will happen on a quarterly basis, depending on what your district is adapting. I'm familiar here with the Chicagoland district, they use quarters. So parent, they should receive a reporting every quarter. There is the report card pickup also time where the parent will meet with the teachers and talk about the in and out of the student being in the classroom, the assessment, all of those things. If you are given that portfolio, please ask those questions. In the progress monitoring, there is the IEP report card, and in that report card, you will see progress made. That's a good thing. You can still ask where is the data to back this statement back up, or progress not being made. And that if it says not being made, then it is really urging you to call a meeting to adjust some of the things in the IEP. So effective progress monitoring and reporting are essential for making informed instructional decision and demonstrating accountability for the student growth within the IEP. The IEP is very, 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 very important to really retain from all of this content that we are providing you today. There is an accountability piece that the school has to provide the parent with information, with data, work sample, to say your child is doing well or your child is not doing well. Let's go back to the table and discuss what we need to do and what we need to adjust. Transition services is part of the IEP. At 14 and a half in Illinois, it becomes the centerpiece of the conversation. In that conversation, the student must be present, must be involved. The transition services, it's an opportunity for the parent and the student to say what they want to become, especially the student. The parent will back up the student if they are not able to articulate what they want to become in the future, what they want to work, where they want to live, and how they will access the community, for example. These are just few examples that came to my mind. But transition is a very, very, very detailed curriculum that we will provide, and we will schedule some training that we would love for you to attend and understand the in and out of the transition. But it is the centerpiece at 14 and a half. It has 4 components or 4 areas. It is outcome oriented. We look at the outcome, what the student want to become, and we take that information and do what they need to do. So that being said, we have to really look at the in and out of the transition pieces, and we have to involve a lot of assessment, a lot of data collection. Some student, they will go to college, and we have to prepare them for that. So what do? We have to discuss the class, we have to discuss all of the things that will involve that student to be in the college setting. So we have to prepare them academically, number one, and functionally. Then if they are going to maintain employment, competitive employment, we have to make sure that they are equipped with all of the skills that will lead them to that job and keeping the job. That's critically important. If they will leave on their own, they have to understand all of those components of being on their own and living alone. So it's a lot of things that it involves in the transition. And when we schedule this, we are going to send you all of the information. To prepare, I am out of time, almost 11 o'clock. And because of the 1 hour that we had scheduled, I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Is to prepare for the meeting, we have to make sure we keep documentation and consider goals. We have to bring someone if we need to, but we have to tell the school we'll bring in someone. We have to understand our children's need, jot down in writing the concerns, etc. I want to make sure that you will have all of the PowerPoint deck. And also, I want to really talk about overcoming these challenges. Okay, I will look at it. Thank you. The challenges is keep the communication with the school effectively and clearly. When you disagree, know your rights. If there is no progress, then you have to make sure that you request an amendment. Place dispute resolution is the last thing, but you have to go back to the people at the table and make sure that you have all the data and the facts in your hand. 504, it is different from the IEP. It is under the Rehab Act of 1973. It does not have the same leverage and level of strength as the IEP. 504 is provided to everybody who may have access issues and they need accommodation. So that being said, 504 can be provided for someone who does not have a medical kind of label, for a better term, like my daughter with autism. There is all of these components of the medical and clinical and educational. 504, if somebody have asthma, or somebody have, for example, diabetes, and they need, that time to be off to get, their medicine, etc. Or anybody who might just need, those accommodations to access because they are struggling on a daily basis because of the legal guidelines with the Rehab Act of 1973. School cannot say we will not provide you. So you will receive the presentation. If you have questions, you will have also the opportunity to look at our information in the slides. But I need you to pull your phones and to get the QR code and tell us how did we do. And we need your feedback because we rely on feedback to keep our funding. Thank you so very much. I am going to look at the Q&A. Okay. If a parent has to write letter to the school on behalf of their child, does the domain meeting take place within 14? The 14 school days is when the parent writes that letter. Then the school have 14 school days to say, yes, we will meet, or no, we will not meet. But they have to tell you why they will not meet. Another one said that they have a 504 for ADHD. That in September, a NORA eval finding of autism level 1. Does my child keep the 504? You can open the conversation for initial evaluation to see if the ASD is adversely impacting your child. That's how you will get the results that you're looking for the IEP. When a student have an IEP, they don't need a 504. They don't, because the IEP will cover everything. Maybe 504 if there is a specific incident that may happen and they need a specific accommodation, but IEP really supersede all the things that the 504 had to offer. So if you have an independent evaluation saying ASD, you can present it, but it does not guarantee services under IEP. Again, I thank each one of you for being here. If you have any questions, please follow up with us. You will see our information. I hope you will have a wonderful and a successful Thanksgiving.